it feels fragile and narcissistic and shameful to take pleasure in something which isn't grand, because so much of our life is performative. And look at oh yeah, good work, man. Like, hooray for waking up on time today. And it's like, no, f you. Like, this is a thing. I did a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely. So I think there are a couple of things to keep in mind. Is I think it is important for anyone who has any kind of win to have gratitude, right? So I think that if we look at all wins feel the same, the interesting thing is that we control a lot more of how we feel about a win than we realize. And a big part of the work that I do with creators is helping them appreciate, you say that you have nothing planned for 2 million, which is cool. We didn't have anything planned for 2 million. And also, like, the joy that you create is partially created by you. And so for creators, it's like helping them appreciate that they got to 2 million, which is a lot of win, which they can't see because of the way that their brain is structured. And also it's people who are depressed, 25-year-old gamers who have trouble getting out of bed, who feel ashamed of their wins. And that's so devastating. Just think about that, right? If you're someone who's struggling to get out of bed every day, and you get out of bed on the 5th day after struggling, and you were ashamed of your win, how the f are you ever going to do anything?
Yeah, I mean, dude, I'm intimately familiar with this. There would be, I thought I had depression in my 20s. I think it was chronic interrupted sleep from being in the nightlife industry, and maybe a disposition toward low mood and ruminative thought. But I wouldn't leave basically bed, bathroom, and the front door to grab Uber Eats for 2 days at a time. Curtains would be drawn. I'd spike my blood sugar with a ton of junk food and then fall back asleep and then wake up. And it's so much shame and guilt around being like, who am I to be defeated by ostensibly nothing? What's going wrong? Nothing's going wrong in your life, and yet you're still unable to get out of bed. And then when you finally do, the shame around what a small thing to do to consider a win. How pitiful are you that this is something that you consider victorious? Like, what a sorry excuse for a human.
So that is, by the way, the shame. Remember we talked about you got the shame somewhere. There it is. Right?
It's probably in a number of other places, but that's one of the places.
And I think that's what's so crippling. That's what I see, which is so sad. And is that, see, the moment that you take your wins and you turn them into losses and beat yourself up because you should be able to accomplish more, that is the moment that you take the poison in your life. Right? Because now, and we see this, so there's research on people with imposter syndrome. And one of the key features cognitively of people with imposter syndrome is anytime they have a win, they attribute it to luck or circumstances or effort. And anytime someone else wins, they attribute it to hard work.
It's like inverse fundamental attribution error, if you know what that is.
Yes.
Yes.
And this is, it's so crippling. And that's why, like, it's so terrifying that you kind of mentioned comparison. It's a huge problem. So that's why, like, a lot of the work that we do is about dissolving your ego, because ego is what makes comparisons. If we understand why do we compare, in order for me to think you're taller and I'm shorter, there has to be a me and there has to be a you. Mm-hmm. And what I'm really an advocate for, and this is where, like, oh, here I am, crying on the behalf of people like Jordan Peterson who are so successful or whatever. And I've seen enough successful people who are struggling on the inside. And I've also seen enough homeless people who are content. And it's amazing. Like, that's when you really learn about life, is when you work with the spectrum of everybody. And I think the main thing that we got to do is, I think it's about comparison. Like, if you think about why do you not celebrate your win? It's because you're comparing against another person. But you can look at some of the work of people like, I think Robert Sapolsky, he's a neuroscientist, and he sort of believes in biological determinism. And the one thing that I've understood is that everyone has truly unique lives. No one has the same level of genetics. No one has the same IQ. No one has the same circumstances. I am where I am today because I had so many advantages. So many advantages. And so people will sometimes be like, oh, Dr. K, you're exceptional. I don't think I'm that way. I understand that from an objective standpoint, you can make that argument. But I think it's like, I didn't do anything to deserve not being born with cerebral palsy. I didn't do anything to deserve having parents that could have paid my bills. I spent 7 years studying to become a monk in, like, India and South Korea and Japan. And, like, I had parents who could pay for that. Right. And the majority of people don't. So all of us are just products of our environment. And I think the more that we recognize that human beings each have their own unique journey, And everyone has challenges, everyone has advantages. And the more we compare, it doesn't work. Because what worked for this person may not work for you because you have a different brain, you have a different circumstance, you have a different life. And so our approach has always been to understand yourself first. Don't worry about success from other people and what they did. I think there's a lot of useful lessons to learn from people who've been on your podcast, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. But at the end of the day, the whole reason that there's a whole self-help industry is because one person doesn't have all the answers, because not all human beings are the same. And so you have to take all of this advice that worked for 1,000 different brains and 1,000 different lives that are different from yours. You have to translate it to yours. It doesn't translate one-to-one. Every person has to walk their own individual journey, do self-exploration, figure out why you have the thoughts that pop up in the way that you do. Right? And I think that's why you've become so successful, because you didn't, I'm sure you've learned from lots of other people, but it looks like what you've really done is take all of this information from people who read 1,000 research articles or wrote 1,000 research articles and apply them to your life. And that's when things get really good. When you start applying things and looking specifically at your life and recognizing that you are a completely unique individual that has never existed in the history of humanity, and that the answer to you advancing your life is not going to be found anywhere else. By all means, get information, but everything has to be translated down to you.
How can people separate their sense of self-worth from their accomplishments?
I mean, it's a great question. So I've got 2 or 3 different answers. So the first is, see, if you can absolve yourself of your failures, then you can have you can get rid of the self-worth from accomplishments. Does that make sense?
No.
So, see, if I fail at something, I'm a crap person, right? And then if I succeed at something, I'm a good person. So both of those have to be separated. This is where a lot of people will focus on one but not the other. So they'll say, like, in both ways, right? So if I'm working with someone who's depressed, they're like, I'm trying to help this person not feel depressed because they have failed at something. We're trying to separate the ego from the action. So if you want to separate your accomplishments from your self-worth, like, you just have to untie both of those things fundamentally. There are 2 ways to, does that kind of make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there are 2 fundamental ways to do this. The first is to recognize, I know it sounds kind of weird, but you don't actually accomplish anything. Like, literally, it is impossible for you to accomplish anything. So you can plant a seed, you can water it, you can do all the right things, but you can't make a plant grow. So as a human being, there's a very fundamental principle that a lot of people don't understand. And I know this is going to sound crazy. All you can do is the action. You cannot achieve any result.
Give me an example.
I can study at Harvard Medical School. I cannot save a life. It is not within my power to save a life. Like, I can be the best doctor on the planet, but like, nowhere does training give me the power of life over death or death. Like, you just can't do that. And this is where, like, another example, I can be the best boyfriend on the planet, but I can't make someone fall in love with me. I just can't do it, right? And this is where some people will disagree. I really think that if you stop and you do this very simple practice, close your eyes. What can you control, Chris?
My movements.
What else?
My thoughts sometimes.
What else?
My breath.
Can you control me?
No.
Can you control who watches this?
No.
Can you control how many views it gets?
No.
Can you control what sponsorships you're going to get or who's going to reach out to you? Can you control the comments in the comment section?
Definitely not.
Like, what the fuck, right? So here we are. You have a successful video and you don't control that. All you control in life is what you do. And this is paradoxically how you become successful. So it is the people who focus on the outcome of their actions that get screwed by it. Because understand this, if my self-worth is dependent on my outcomes, then even if I achieve what I want, then like oftentimes people don't feel great, even if they live up to their expectations, right? It's like 1 million and then I need 2 and then I need 3, then I need 4. If you are relying on accomplishments to determine your self-worth, it will never be enough. Right? Because there's always another promotion. There's a $100,000 car. There's a $300,000 car. So if your self-worth is tied to something external, it'll never be enough. This is what we call moving the goalposts. And it's why human beings, like, if that were the case, then anyone who makes $150,000 would just be chill. But that's not how it works. The reason we think that is because we've been conditioned. We are not our self-worth, but other people's worth. Other people's judgment of our worth is dependent on our accomplishments. No one gives a shit about who you are. They care about what you do. Oh, like you get this award because you got a 4.0. That's why we get conditioned in this. So then we adopt their view, but that doesn't work long term. So I think separating out and really recognizing that if you stop and think about it, all you control is like what you feel. That is the only thing. If you cannot feel it, you cannot control it. Literally. Show me someone who can control anything outside of themselves. And this is where people will say, and this is, but I can say particular things, I can work harder. Yeah, you can do all that stuff, but you don't actually control what happens. So all you can do is take the right action. And then I remember I learned this because one day I was in the emergency room and a patient came in with 3 gunshot wounds. And so this person's dying, right? And it's like, we're going to do everything that we can, but holy shit, we don't know if this person's going to live or die. We just can't do it. And this is one of the best hospitals on the planet, right? Amazing attending this brilliant trauma surgeon. And we just can't save this. We don't know. And think about how advanced medicine is. Think about all these tools we have. We have antibiotics and we have MRIs and CT scans. And we literally we can take someone's heart out of their body and we can give them somebody else's heart. And we can replace your heart. We can replace your kidneys, but we can't save a life. So there may be graft versus host disease. You never know. So that's number one. Second thing is just dissolve the ego. The moment that you dissolve your ego, which is if we look at things there are even studies now of psychedelics, for example, and psychedelics and trauma. And if you look at the studies of people who use psychedelics for the healing of trauma, you can predict whether there will be a therapeutic improvement based on the type of psychedelic experience they have. So if I see cool colors and patterns, I won't be healed. If I have specifically an ego death experience, that's what correlates with healing. So a lot of and this is also what the yogis and the Buddhist people and Buddha and all these people figured out, is the more that you dissolve your ego, the more content you will be.
We'll get back to talking to Dr. K in 1 minute, but first I need to tell you about Momentous. You might have heard me say that I took my testosterone from 495 to 1006 last year, and 2 of the supplements I used throughout that were Fedoja agrestis and Tonkat Ali. I first heard Dr. Andrew Huberman talk about these really impressive effects, which sound great until you realize that most supplements don't actually contain what they're advertising. Momentous make the only NSF-certified Fedoja agrestis and Tonkat Ali on the planet. That means they're tested so rigorously that even Olympic athletes can use it, and that is why I partnered with them. So, if you're not performing in the gym or the bedroom the way that you would like, this is a fantastic place to begin to naturally improve your testosterone, and there is a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can buy it, try it for 29 days, and if you do not like it, they will give you your money back. Plus, they ship internationally. Right now, you can get 20% off everything site-wide by going to the link in the show notes below or heading to livemomentous.com/modernwisdom using the code modernwisdom at checkout. That's livemomentous.com/modernwisdom and code modernwisdom at checkout.